Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia, yet its economy collapsed. The United States says this conflict is about democracy, but oil sanctions, energy security, and global power tell a very different story. To understand the U.S.-Venezuela conflict, we need to look at natural resources, not politics.
So this is the big question, the puzzle we're going to piece together. And believe me, the answer isn't as simple as pointing to one political ideology or another. It's really about the hidden wiring of power, money, and resources that runs our world in the 21st century.
Just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, look at that number, 300 billion barrels. That's the largest proven oil reserve on the entire planet. This isn't just a national resource, it's a piece of the global chessboard. But, and this is a huge but, there's a catch.
And here's the catch. Not all oil is the same. See, Venezuela's oil is what's called heavy crude. Think of it like tar or molasses. It's incredibly thick and sludgy. You can't just put it in your car. It needs these super specialized, very expensive refineries to turn it into useful things like gasoline. And guess who has a whole bunch of those refineries? Yep, the United States.
For decades, this created a really interesting system where both sides kinda needed each other. Venezuela would send its heavy crude up north, the U.S. refineries along the Gulf Coast would process it, and a steady stream of dollars would flow back south to Caracas. It worked. It was a relationship of mutual dependence, that is, until politics blew the whole thing up. So how exactly did this stable system fall apart? Well, that brings us to the weapon of choice in this modern conflict. And we're not talking about a traditional war here, with tanks and planes. Nope, the weapon was something far quieter, but maybe even more powerful. You know, this shift in politics, it happened really fast. After all those years of cooperation, things changed in a big way under Presidents Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro. Venezuela started to pull away from America's orbit, and the response from Washington? It wasn't military. It was all-out economic warfare.
And here's exactly how they did it. It's like a playbook, really. First, the U.S. used its control of the global financial system to cut Venezuela off from getting loans in U.S. dollars. Then, they blocked access to the specific American technology needed for those complex refineries. And finally, they basically put the national oil company on a blacklist, making it toxic for anyone else in the world to do business with.
The result was, well, catastrophic. Just look at this. Production doesn't just dip, it falls off a cliff. From a pretty healthy 3 million barrels a day to less than 1 million. These sanctions didn't just target the government, they were like pulling the plug on the country's entire economic engine. So here's the really crucial insight from all this. What the Venezuelan situation shows us is that the nature of power is changing. In our totally interconnected world, having control over the flow of money, man, that can be way more powerful than deploying an army. But wait, the story doesn't stop there, because even with all this economic pressure and open hostility, the U.S. never completely cut ties, and the reason why they didn't, well, that tells you everything you need to know about how the world really works. It's the obvious question, isn't it? If you're actively trying to bring down a regime with sanctions, why do you keep their number on speed dial? The answer has zero to do with friendship and everything to do with cold, hard, strategic logic.
Here's why Washington just can't quit Venezuela. First, it's right there in America's backyard. The shipping routes are short and secure. Second, it's not in the Middle East, so you don't have to worry about all the drama and volatile choke points over there. And maybe the biggest reason, it's like having a giant emergency gas can right next door if a global energy crisis ever hits.
And you don't even have to look far for proof. Just think about what happened the second the Ukraine war started and Russian oil was sanctioned. All of a sudden, U.S. officials were on a plane to Caracas. Hey, let's talk. Suddenly, licenses were being quietly issued to let some U.S. companies get back in the game. And that right there is the real takeaway. For all the high-minded talk about democracy and political values, when push comes to shove, what really matters is keeping the lights on and the cars running. It's pure pragmatism. Energy security almost always wins. Okay, so let's pull the camera back a bit, because what's happening with Venezuela, it isn't taking place in a vacuum. It's actually a perfect example of a much, much bigger shift in how the world works. The whole game is changing. So when the U.S. tried to isolate Venezuela, what happened? Well, Venezuela didn't just roll over and disappear. It pivoted. It looked east. It found new partners in powers like China, who provided loans, and Russia, who offered military and energy know-how. An entirely new economic ecosystem started to form, one that didn't rely on the West. And this is the massive global shift we're talking about. We're moving from a past where one superpower basically called the shots to a future where you have multiple competing power centers. For a country with resources, that means you suddenly have options. It's a whole new ballgame.
And listen, this is no longer just about oil. It's about the natural gas that heats our homes. It's about the lithium that powers your phone and every electric car. It's about the rare earth minerals that make all of our tech work. These things aren't just commodities anymore. They are strategic assets, the central pieces in a new era of global competition.
So let's tie all this together, because when you look at all the different pieces on the board, a really clear pattern begins to emerge. This isn't just a collection of random events, it's the new face of conflict.
The playbook for this new resource war is actually pretty simple. It's a three-step dance. Step 1, a country has something that the world desperately needs. Step 2, that country decides it wants to call its own shots and pushes back against the old system. Step 3, the response isn't bombs, it's banking. Financial sanctions designed to force them back into line. We've seen this movie before, with Iran, with Russia, and of course, with Venezuela.
So at the end of the day, when you see a conflict like this, you have to look beyond the headlines about promoting democracy. It's really about control. At the most basic level, it's about who controls the flow of the world's energy.
But it's also about something just as important: who controls the financial system that pays for that energy.
Because if you control the resources and you control the money, you get to do the most powerful thing of all. You get to set the rules of the game for everybody else. And that is what's really at stake here.
Which leaves all of us with one final, very big question to think about. As all these critical resources, from oil to lithium, become harder to get and more fought over, is this what war looks like now? Is this quiet financial combat the future of conflict? The answer to that is going to define the world we live in for decades to come.